Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are getting into something really special, the architecture of a modern literary phenomenon.
We're talking about Alex Michaelides' breakout thriller, The Silent Patient.
And it's a book famous for that ending, that absolutely audacious twist. So we're here to peel back the layers and, figure out exactly how he pulled it off.
Right. Our mission today is really about the blueprint, not just a plot summary. We're looking at what shaped him, how you get from ancient Greek tragedy to Agatha Christie to real-world psychotherapy.
And how it all comes together to engineer this incredible narrative deception.
One of the best in recent memory, for sure.
So for our sources, we've pulled directly from Michaelides himself, from his own discussions, and we've paired that with a pretty deep literary analysis of the novel. The goal is to really uncover the mechanics behind a thriller that hinges on silence and ultimately on deception.
It's a masterclass in plotting.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, with his roots.
Yeah.
Because they are just so rich.
They really are. Michaelides is a novelist, a screenwriter, but his identity is so deeply rooted in the classics.
He's Greek Cypriot, grew up in Cyprus. You can just feel that culture as the foundation for everything he does.
Oh, it's more than a foundation. He's been very clear about it. It's his main source of inspiration. He feels profoundly influenced by the Greek myths, the great tragedians.
The ones he studied in school.
Exactly. Homer, Aeschylus, Sophocles. And he especially points to Euripides. He says, look, this is where most of my ideas come from.
That's a serious place to start. I mean, you're talking about these huge themes of fate, of hubris, but then he layers on his biggest influence.
Agatha Christie.
The queen of the whodunit. It seems like such an amazing, almost odd combination. High tragedy and a tight mystery plot.
But it's a totally purposeful marriage of the two. And that is the key to understanding his writing. He knows Christie's books, like inside and out.
So this was a deliberate experiment.
Completely. He saw The Silent Patient as this attempt to take her incredible plotting, that perfect clockwork mechanism of a mystery, and fuel it with really complex modern psychology.
He literally asked himself, what?
He imagined what Agatha Christie might write right now, if she were writing about therapists and trauma and all the things we talk about today.
So Christie gives him the scaffolding, the structure, the interlocking pieces.
The clues, the red herrings, all of it.
So where does the Greek tragedy part fit in? Is it just to give it, some weight?
No, it provides the why. This is the crucial part. Christie's structure is for discovering who did it, right? Even when the answer is hidden in plain sight.
Right.
But Euripides and the tragedians, they define the internal struggle, the theme of an inescapable destiny. Michaelides takes that plotting engine from Christie and uses it to solve a crime that isn't about greed, but about psychological trauma acting like this ancient, unavoidable fate.
So the twist isn't just a gotcha moment.
Not at all. It's the final confirmation that the character's past trauma was their destiny all along. And you add in his love for Hitchcock and, psychology in general, and you get his unique voice.
Okay, so to make that blend feel authentic, he needed real psychological depth. And he didn't just get that from books.
No, his path into psychology was deeply personal. He's talked about feeling messed up as a teenager and just wanting to heal himself.
Which gives us the emotional engine for his main character, Theo Faber.
Yeah.
This guy who is desperate to be a healer, but is maybe the most broken person in the story.
And what's interesting is Michaelides didn't just stay patient. He tried to cross that professional line himself.
He did, right? He spent years in therapy, read everything he could.
And he even studied psychology at 2 different schools. But he eventually concluded that he was a writer, not a therapist. He left before finishing.
He got the knowledge, but didn't take the title.
Exactly. But he did get some crucial hands-on experience that really fed the novel's setting, the Grove.
The psychiatric facility.
Yep. He worked part-time for a couple of years at a secure psychiatric facility, so he saw the environment up close.
And he was very clear about something important there, wasn't he? An ethical line.
Very important one. He stresses that he did not use the people he met there for his characters.
So if he didn't use the people, what he used, what was the resource he mined from that experience?
He kept a diary, but not of the patients. He kept a diary of his own emotional reactions and responses to being in that unit.
Oh, that's a brilliant move for a writer.
It's crucial. Instead of just stealing external details from people, he captured his own internal landscape, the frustration, the hope, the dread, and he poured all of those feelings into Theo Faber.
Which makes total sense. If your narrator is an obsessed therapist, you need to understand that feeling of obsession from the inside. That emotional diary becomes the fuel for Theo's entire journey.
Precisely. It makes Theo's narration feel so personal and, ironically, so reliable at first because it's grounded in the writer's actual, genuine feelings.
Okay, on a lighter note, we have to share a couple of his personal quirks.
We do.
What's the weird writing ritual?
It's pretty unusual. He listens to the exact same piece of classical music on repeat while he's writing.
The same song, over and over.
He says it puts him into a kind of trance. And for a book that needs that level of intense focus on one hidden thread, I guess it makes sense. You need a sonic landscape that doesn't distract you.
A trance state for plotting. I love it. And what about his dose of humility, the embarrassing book?
He confessed that the most embarrassing book he read and actually liked was The Rules.
Not The Rules, the 90s dating guide.
The one and only. It's just a great reminder that inspiration for writing about, dark human nature can come from literally anywhere.
Okay, so if his personal journey provided the emotional fuel for Theo, let's talk about how Michaelides built the engine, the architecture of that incredible twist.
Right, and this is where you really see the power of that Christie influence. He conceived the whole story in general terms, but then he worked backward. The entire book was shaped around that one central twist. He had to make sure every single chapter, every character, every tiny detail worked to hide the truth, but also made sense in retrospect.
That sounds like a nightmare. So much pressure. You move one little piece and the whole thing could just fall apart.
It's basically structural engineering on paper. It took incredible persistence. He said he just writes and rewrites for months. He doesn't count the hours because the goal isn't just finishing, it's perfecting the deception.
And we can see that in the revision details, can't we? It wasn't about making the book longer.
No, it was about precision. The first draft was about 90,000 words, then it went down to 70,000, and the final version ended up around 80,000.
That's a huge amount of sculpting.
A huge amount. He called it a process of constant adding and removing. So for anyone listening who's working on a project, that's the takeaway. The real work is often in the editing, in shaping that tension.
And after all that meticulous work, he was still completely surprised by the result.
Totally blindsided. He said his biggest surprise was the massive global response. He admitted he never really imagined anyone would actually read it while he was writing it.
It just shows you, when you combine that personal, emotional truth with a classical, airtight structure, sometimes you create the exact story the world was waiting for. So let's pivot into the novel itself now and see how this architecture works. You two main threads, right?
Right. Alicia's diary entries from before the murder, and then Theo Faber's narration in the present day as her therapist. The setup is brutally simple. Alicia killed her husband. The evidence is overwhelming.
So the classic detective question of who did it is already answered on page 1.
Exactly. So the whole novel is driven by the question of why. Why did she do it? And maybe even more important, why did she suddenly go silent right after?
She becomes the silent patient. And her silence is this huge professional crisis for Theo.
A huge one. I mean, he's a psychotherapist. His whole job is based on the talking cure, the Freudian idea that speaking about your trauma is how you heal.
And if the patient won't talk?
His main tool is useless. He's professionally paralyzed, so he has to shift his whole methodology. He starts trying to use nonverbal cues, but then he quickly crosses a line.
He starts investigating her past.
He does. He's interviewing her friends, her family, her colleagues.
He starts acting like a detective, not a doctor. And that's Michaelides' first big structural clue to us, the readers, that something is off with Theo.
It is. A really careful reader should notice right away that his actions are, well, they're not appropriate for a therapist. The sources call his motivations unclear and dubious. His professional failure pushes him into this boundary-crossing obsession, which signals that his need to solve the mystery is way more personal than it is professional.
And that instability is everything for the twist to work. He should be focused on the patient, but he seems to be lost in his own head.
Which brings us to a clinical concept that Michaelides just weaponizes against the reader.
No.
Countertransference.
Okay, break that down for us.
Countertransference is basically when the patient's emotions or conflicts start affecting the therapist's emotional state. It blurs the lines. Objectivity becomes almost impossible.
And in the book, it's impossible to tell if Theo is really understanding Alicia or
if he's just projecting his own stuff onto her, his own anxieties, his own traumas.
Can you give us a concrete example of that?
Sure. Theo's own marriage is falling apart. His wife, Kathy, is cheating on him. So when he looks at Alicia and interprets her silence or her art, he's filtering it all through his own sense of betrayal.
So he sees her as a victim of betrayal because he feels betrayed.
Exactly. His narration, which is supposed to be about her, is actually this distorted diary of his own failing life.
And that theme of projection expands out to Alicia herself.
Yeah.
As the silent patient, she's like a blank canvas, a Rorschach test for everyone.
Absolutely. Her silence and her art invite everyone to project onto her. The public sees her as either this dangerous femme fatale or an innocent victim. Michaelides even says Alicia is a mirror, and people only see their own reflection.
And he even uses a classical reference to drive this point home, right? The Greek play Alcestis.
Yes, from Euripides. It's about a woman who dies for her husband, is brought back from the dead, and then she refuses to speak.
Just like Alicia.
It perfectly mirrors her situation. It reinforces this frustrated desire for interpretive mastery. We desperately want the silent woman to explain herself, but her silence just forces us to question our own assumptions.
Which brings us to the ultimate theme. This inescapable cycle of trauma. It all comes back to the Greek tragedians.
It does. Both Theo and Alicia are defined by severe childhood trauma. And Theo genuinely believes he's helping her because he sees his own pain mirrored in her.
The novel asks a really dark question then. Can we ever really overcome trauma, or is it just destiny?
Right. Alicia tries to repress it using art. Theo preaches confronting it through speech.
But in the end, neither method works for them.
Tragically, no. Alicia's buried trauma is triggered by one final betrayal. And Theo, despite all his therapy, becomes a therapist himself and still can't escape his own fate. His terror of abandonment drives his final destructive act. The story wasn't a detective novel after all. It was a tragedy.
And that leads to the final gut punch of a pivot, the twist. It confirms his narration was unreliable the whole time. So how did he distract us so well?
By using Christie's methods against us, he focused our attention on Theo's external investigation, the interviews, the red herrings, so we wouldn't look at the one place we should have been looking.
Which was?
Theo's own internal monologue, his justifications. The narration is unreliable not because he lies about what happens, but because he omits and completely misinterprets his own motives.
And his attempted murder of Alicia at the end exposes everything. He wasn't a healer.
He was just another character acting out his own unresolved trauma, proving that the ancient idea of an inescapable fate is alive and well. Hashtag tagged, hashtag outro.
Wow. This has been a tremendously layered deep dive. I think the core lesson is the power of influence. Michaelides took the plotting of Agatha Christie, the weight of Euripides, and used real psychological concepts to build this fatally flawed character.
And the genius is building the entire novel around the psychological failure of its own narrator.
It's incredible.
And if you go back and reread it, now you know why it works so well. Michaelides uses Alicia's silence as a mirror, and the final twist just forces you, the reader, to realize what you missed by trusting that reflection.
So what does this all mean for us? What's the final thought?
Well, Michaelides created a story where childhood pain dictates the final act, and he credits the Greek tragedians for his inspiration. So consider this. If the trauma from Act 1 becomes destiny in the final act, like it did for Theo and Alicia, how much control does any character, or maybe any of us, really have over our own ending?
A truly tragic, haunting thought to leave on.